The year was 1970. America was in the middle of a horsepower war. Every major automaker was obsessed with one thing: building bigger engines, making more power, and dominating the streets. Chevrolet had the 454. Buick had the Stage 1 455. Oldsmobile unleashed the 455 Rocket. Chrysler had the mighty 426 HEMI. Plymouth was stuffing the same HEMI into anything with wheels. Ford counters with the Boss 429. Pontiac had the Ram Air 4. AMC was building the Rebel machine. The streets were alive with engine noise, tire smoke, quarter-mile grudge matches. This was the peak, the absolute zenith of American automotive excess. And then there was Cadillac, a brand known for luxury, comfort, quiet rides, the kind of cars your grandfather drove to the country club. Chrome bumpers polished to a mirror finish, leather interiors that smelled like success, power windows, air conditioning, every conceivable luxury feature. At least, that's what most people thought, because hidden beneath the massive hood of one particular Cadillac was an engine so enormous, so brutally powerful, that it quietly became one of the most outrageous V8s America ever built. An engine larger than almost anything offered by Detroit's muscle car divisions. An engine that produced enough torque to embarrass many dedicated performance cars. An engine that could rip the pavement with the same fury as purpose-built drag machines. An engine that should have become a legend. Instead, it became forgotten, overlooked, dismissed as just another luxury car power plant. But what almost nobody knows is that Cadillac's giant 500 cubic inch V8 wasn't just a luxury engine, it was one of America's secret muscle weapons. And the real story is far crazier than most people realize. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to the late 1960s. Cadillac wasn't interested in drag racing. The company wasn't trying to beat Dodge, Chevrolet, or Ford at stoplight battles. Their engineers weren't tuning engines for maximum quarter-mile performance. Their customers cared about something else: smoothness, effortless acceleration, the ability to move 2.5 tons of luxury car without breaking a sweat, the ability to merge onto highways without hesitation, to pass slower traffic with just a gentle throttle application, to never ever feel like the car was struggling. Engineers knew that moving such enormous vehicles required torque, massive amounts of it. Not high-revving horsepower, not screaming race engines that peaked at 6,500 revolutions per minute. Torque, low-end grunt, the kind that could launch a luxury cruiser from a standstill with barely a touch of the throttle, the kind that made power delivery feel completely linear and utterly predictable. So Cadillac engineers began developing an entirely new big block V8. They studied the competition, analyzed what worked, what didn't. They understood that their customers expected refinement alongside performance. The result debuted for the 1970 model year. Its specifications were staggering. The engine displaced 500 cubic inches, that's 8.2 liters. Even today, that sounds ridiculous. In an era of downsized turbocharged engines, hearing about an 8.2-liter naturally aspirated V8 seems almost fictional. Back then, it was nearly unbelievable. The engine used a 4.30-inch bore and a 4.304-inch stroke, creating one of the largest production passenger car engines ever installed in an American automobile. That stroke was particularly impressive. Long-stroke engines generate tremendous leverage on the crankshaft. That means torque, lots of it. Compression ratio stood at 10.01. For a luxury engine, that was aggressive. Most luxury power plants use lower compression for smoother operation. Cadillac wanted both smoothness and power. Factory output was rated at 400 horsepower. Torque? An astonishing 550 pound-feet. Read that number again. 550 pound-feet. Those numbers made it one of the highest torque production engines in America. And unlike many muscle car engines that needed high RPM to make power, the Cadillac 500 delivered its punch almost immediately. Peak torque arrived around 3,000 revolutions per minute. That's incredibly low. Most performance engines required 4,000 or even 5,000 revolutions per minute before delivering maximum torque. The Cadillac was making maximum twist before many engines even started waking up. The engine barely had to work. You simply touched the throttle, and the car surged forward. No drama, no waiting for power, just instant, relentless thrust. Imagine sitting behind the wheel of a nearly 5,000-pound Cadillac Eldorado. The car is massive, a land yacht in every sense. You press the gas, the front end rises. The massive hood points toward the sky, and all 550 pound-feet shove the car forward like a freight train. The transmission barely notices the load. The rear tires struggle for traction, and you're suddenly doing 60 miles per hour before you realize what happened. For a luxury car in 1970, it felt almost absurd, like someone had accidentally installed a racing engine in your living room. But there was a problem. The world was changing, fast. By the early 1970s, emissions regulations were tightening. The Clean Air Act was forcing manufacturers to reduce harmful emissions. Insurance companies were declaring war on high-performance cars. Young drivers with muscle cars faced premiums that sometimes exceeded the value of the vehicle itself. Fuel economy suddenly mattered. The 1973 oil crisis would soon make efficiency a national priority, and Detroit's horsepower party was coming to an end. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as Cadillac had created one of the most impressive engines in its history, the industry began strangling the very formula that made it special. Compression ratios started falling. Engineers added emissions equipment. Catalytic converters appeared. Horsepower ratings dropped. Performance suffered. And then the real nightmare began. In 1971, Cadillac reduced compression from 10.01 to approximately 8.51. The change was necessary to run on lower-octane unleaded fuel. Horsepower fell. Torque remained impressive, but the engine's raw edge started disappearing. That crisp throttle response began softening. By 1972, the industry switched from gross horsepower ratings to net horsepower measurements. This was actually a positive change for honesty. Gross ratings had been misleading for years, but the optics were terrible. Overnight, power figures across Detroit appeared to collapse. The Cadillac 500 suddenly carried a rating of around 235 net horsepower. Many enthusiasts assumed the engine had become weak, neutered, a shadow of its former self. But that wasn't the full story. Net ratings measured power with accessories, exhaust systems, and production equipment attached. Air conditioning compressors, alternators, power steering pumps, restrictive factory exhaust systems. Gross ratings had been measured under ideal laboratory conditions, no accessories, open headers, optimized ignition timing. The numbers looked dramatically different. A 400 gross horsepower engine might only produce 280 net horsepower. The actual performance capability hadn't necessarily changed as much as the numbers suggested. Yet despite lower ratings, the giant Cadillac still produced mountains of low-end torque. The engine remained incredibly effective at moving heavy vehicles. What changed wasn't just the measurement system. The engine itself was slowly being softened by emissions equipment, reduced compression, and stricter regulations. Air pumps appeared, exhaust gas recirculation systems, retarded ignition timing. All of it killed performance. Most people don't realize how quickly the muscle car era collapsed. Between 1970 and 1975, many of America's greatest engines lost huge portions of their performance. The legendary Chevrolet LS6 454 disappeared after 1970. The HEMI was discontinued after 1971. Pontiac's mighty Ram Air engines vanished. The Cadillac 500 was no exception. But beneath all those compromises, the architecture remained remarkable. The foundation was still solid. The displacement was still massive. The potential was still there, waiting. The block itself was surprisingly lightweight. Many enthusiasts assume an 8.2-liter engine must be impossibly heavy, something that would sink a boat. In reality, Cadillac engineers achieved impressive weight savings. They used thin wall casting technology, removed material where it wasn't structurally necessary, optimized the design for strength-to-weight ratio. The complete engine weighed roughly 595 pounds. That's less than some competing big blocks from Chevrolet and Ford. The famous Chevrolet 454 weighed more in some configurations. Its design emphasized efficiency as well as size. Large ports improved airflow. The intake manifold was well designed for its intended purpose. The crankshaft was incredibly robust, forged steel, properly balanced. The long stroke delivered exceptional leverage. Everything about the engine focused on effortless torque production, maximum capability with minimum effort. And that's exactly what made hot rodders fall in love with it years later. Because while the automotive industry moved on, a small group of enthusiasts discovered something shocking. The Cadillac 500 had enormous untapped potential. What they discovered next changed everything. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, used Cadillacs became incredibly cheap. Gas prices were high. Large luxury cars were unpopular. Nobody wanted a car that got single-digit fuel economy. Many ended up in junkyards. Rows and rows of once expensive Cadillacs sitting in fields, rusting away, forgotten. And sitting inside those junkyards were giant 500 cubic inch engines. Complete engines could often be purchased for a few $100s, sometimes less. Sometimes you could get one for $50 if you pulled it yourself. Hot rodders quickly noticed something. These engines were producing huge torque numbers while weighing less than many competing big blocks. That combination was rare, very rare. Soon, racers began pulling Cadillac 500s from old Eldorados and Devilles. They cleaned them up, rebuilt them, installed them into lighter vehicles, old Chevelles, Novas, Ford Fairlanes, early Mustangs, even Model A hot rods. The results were startling. A stock Cadillac engine suddenly found itself pushing cars thousands of pounds lighter than the vehicles it originally powered. Acceleration became violent. Quarter-mile times dropped dramatically. Cars that previously ran 14-second quarters suddenly dipped into the 12s. Some broke into the 11s. Street racers started paying attention, and then builders began modifying them. Larger valves, performance camshafts with aggressive profiles, improved intake manifolds. Aftermarket aluminum heads eventually appeared. Better exhaust systems, headers, the gains were impressive. A mildly modified Cadillac 500 could easily exceed 500 horsepower while producing torque numbers that bordered on ridiculous. Some race builds pushed well beyond 700 horsepower. Others crossed the 800 horsepower mark using forced induction. The giant Cadillac block proved far stronger than many people expected. It could handle boost, significant amounts of boost. The bottom end was stout enough to survive punishment that would destroy weaker engines, yet despite its capability, the engine never achieved the fame of a HEMI. Why? Because it lacked racing pedigree. The 426 HEMI dominated NASCAR, specifically built for homologation purposes. The Chevrolet 427 conquered tracks nationwide. Ford's 427 FE won Le Mans. Those engines built legends through competition, through victory, through magazine covers and trophy presentations. The Cadillac 500 spent its life hidden inside luxury cars, cruising to country clubs, ferrying executives to business meetings, gliding along interstate highways in near silence. No famous racing victories, no factory drag racing programs, no marketing campaigns celebrating quarter-mile dominance. Its achievements happened quietly, almost secretly, in backyard garages, small-town drag strips, land-speed racing circles. And that's why so many enthusiasts overlooked it. But some builders understood exactly what they had. One of the most famous examples emerged in the world of land-speed racing. Racers discovered that the Cadillac's massive displacement created incredible torque for pushing vehicles through the air at extreme speeds. Bonneville Salt Flats competitors experimented with modified Cadillac engines. They found the torque curve perfect for their applications. Others used them in truck pulling competitions. The low-end grunt was ideal. Off-road racers appreciated the enormous low-end power. Desert racing, rock crawling, the engine kept finding new audiences. Even decades after Cadillac stopped producing it, marine applications appeared. Some were adapted for industrial use, but there was another reason enthusiasts loved the 500: reliability, at least when built properly. The bottom end was extremely durable. The crankshaft could handle substantial abuse. The block featured generous material in critical areas. Main webs were thick. Cylinder walls had adequate meat for boring. Unlike some high-performance engines that demanded constant maintenance, the Cadillac could produce tremendous power without becoming temperamental. That's a rare trait, especially in big displacement V8s. Many race engines require frequent rebuilds, constant attention. The Cadillac could run hard and keep running. Of course, it wasn't perfect. As power levels increased, weaknesses appeared. Stock connecting rods eventually reached their limits. Above certain horsepower levels, they needed replacement. Oil control became important during aggressive racing applications. The stock oil pan wasn't ideal for high G-forces. Cooling systems needed upgrades. Factory radiators struggled with sustained high-performance use. Some builders experienced head gasket issues under extreme boost. The stock gaskets weren't designed for forced induction, but compared to many competitors, these problems were manageable. The foundation remained solid, and that's what mattered. By the 1980s, however, Cadillac's world looked completely different. The era of giant displacement V8s was ending. Corporate average fuel economy standards forced manufacturers to pursue efficiency. HEMI regulations changed everything. Downsized engines became the future. Electronic fuel injection arrived. Turbocharging began gaining traction. The massive 500 cubic inch Cadillac no longer fit the industry's direction. It was a dinosaur, a remnant of a bygone era. Production ended after the 1976 model year, just 6 years after its introduction. Think about that. One of the largest production passenger car engines in American history existed for only a brief moment. Then it was gone. Tooling changed. New engines replaced it. Smaller, more efficient, less exciting. The automotive world moved on, or so it seemed, because legends have a funny way of surviving. As the years passed, enthusiasts began rediscovering the Cadillac 500. Internet forums dedicated to the engine appeared. Knowledge spread. Performance parts manufacturers started offering upgrades. Specialized builders emerged. Shops that understood the platform. Online communities shared tuning knowledge. Dyno results. Combination recommendations. People realized this forgotten giant deserved far more respect than it received. Today, Cadillac 500 powered hot rods appear at drag strips across America. Street machines use them for tire shredding torque. Classic car shows feature them. Restorers preserve original examples in classic Cadillacs, and collectors increasingly recognize their historical significance. The numbers still impress: a 4.30-inch bore, a 4.304-inch stroke, 500 cubic inches, 400 horsepower in its strongest factory form, 550 pound-feet of torque when most competitors struggled to match it. Those aren't just statistics, they're evidence of an era when engineers solved problems with displacement, when fuel economy wasn't the priority, when the answer to how much torque do we need was often more, when bigger was genuinely considered better. And maybe that's why the Cadillac 500 remains so fascinating. It represents the final years of unrestricted American excess, a moment when luxury and brute force unexpectedly collided. A machine designed to move massive Cadillacs with effortless grace that accidentally became one of the most underrated performance engines Detroit ever created. You think you know America's muscle car history? Not like this, because hidden between the famous HEMIs, Cobra Jets, LS6S, and Super Duty Pontiacs sits a forgotten giant, an 8.2-liter monster that never needed to shout, never needed validation, never needed magazine covers. It simply produced torque, endless torque. And for those who understand what that means, that's exactly why the Cadillac 500 still commands respect more than 50 years later. It wasn't America's most famous muscle engine, it wasn't America's most successful racing engine, but it may have been one of the most overlooked, a luxury car V8 that became a hot rod legend. A forgotten weapon that refused to stay forgotten. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments which underrated American engine deserves a deep dive next. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next piece of forgotten automotive history.